Hi Stitchy friends, welcome to the Cute Olive. Today is April 1st, 2025 and it is Flosstube Day. We're going to get started with a little bit of introductions because this is my first Flosstube. So to begin with, first of all, Flosstube is nothing more than cross stitch on YouTube. It's just a coin that has been termed by cross stitchers to make it easy for us to find videos of other cross stitchers. To start with introductions, we're going to introduce this lovely little gal right here. Her name is Lady, and she is my production manager, my quality control checker. Her specialist is taking naps, and she is the destroyer of 103 silk spools, so I do have to keep those away from her. Now, as for me, my name is Vashti. I'm going to go ahead and put that up here on the screen because it is one of those names that you don't hear super often in today's world. Vashti is actually an Old Testament name. She was the queen before Esther, but it was also my great-grandmother's name, and I was very privileged to be named after her, and I consider it an honor to have her name. Social media, however, isn't always super conducive to having the name Vashti, and so I created the name Olive Green. It's based off of a nickname that I had and the fact that my maiden name is Green. So Olive Green is the name of my channel, and it's how you'll find me in the digital world. Now, how did I get into cross stitch? That's what today's video is actually going to be focused on. I see a lot of people and we're posting our whip parades and we're posting what we're doing, and people come in to see me where I work and they'll ask me things about advancing and they'll be like, how did you get to where you are? You know, social media doesn't always show that. We just jump in where we are and it looks like it was super easy and it took no effort and we just knew all this. It wasn't that easy. We all had to start somewhere, right? So I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about my journey, and I'm going to have to put this lovely little lady down. I'm going to let her go do her job so that I can have my hands free to show you some lovely things that we're going to do. Give me 1 second. I'm going to hit pause. Okay, gals and guys, did you miss me? I know that was a super long pause, right? So in order to talk about cross stitch, I'm actually going to have to start with talking about quilting. I've been quilting for 20 plus years now. I got my first sewing machine when I was in my early 20s and it's super fun. I had seen my grandmother sew all throughout my life. I loved her sewing room. As a child, I loved to go stand by her and see what she was up to, and she made me some of the most beautiful clothes. And I had seen some quilters who had the really big wooden frames in their house that they would load their quilt tops on with their backs and their battings, and they would hand quilt these quilts. Now, when I call myself a quilter, I don't mean a hand quilter. I have a long arm quilt machine. I am a long armer, and currently that long arm is coming in very handy for cross stitching because I'm sitting at the back of my long arm and it gives me a lovely little table just to hold some of my charts and some of my cross stitch pieces. So we're going to start by talking about this quilt right here. This is a Lori Holt quilt. It's called Great Granny Squared, and it is made entirely in Lori Holt fabric. In 2020, a lot of us experienced effects of the pandemic, and I had been working as a manager of 3 locations for a large corporation. And after about 6 months, my husband and I decided maybe it was time for me to not renew my contract, but rather to stay home and start my own home business. And that's how I got the Cute Olive. I'd actually already been doing some things on the side, and so it was just time, and I've never looked back, and it's been a lot of fun ever since. Now, being home in the pandemic, how many of you got a little lonely? Like, we needed social interaction. And right as the pandemic was starting, I mean like a week before the toilet paper ran off the shelves, right? My young adult daughter moved out of our house and we became empty nesters. And so then I'm home all alone and my husband's working these really long hours, which is one of the reasons we decided it would be best for me to be at our house. And I needed a little bit of social engagement. So I, like many others, turned to YouTube. I'd been a longtime quilter. I was really enjoying all the sewing that I was doing and the quilting that I was doing. And I started watching not only Fat Quarter Shop, but Missouri Star Quilt Company. You know, 1 hour videos only last for 1 hour, right? So it takes quite a few of them to put a voice in your house for all day long. And when I say watching, I don't always mean glued to the TV watching. I mean, I'm actively doing something, but they're a voice in the house, so the house doesn't seem so quiet. So after I watched all of Kimberly Jolly's Fat Quarter Shop videos and all of Jenny and Misty and Natalie's Missouri Star Quilt Company videos, I was running out of videos. So I had started watching Kimberly Jolly's cross stitch videos. And around that time, my young adult daughter moved back into the house. And when I ran out of Kimberly Jolly's cross stitch videos, I found Lori Holt's cross stitch videos. Lori Holt, the Lori Holt. And so I watched Lori Holt's Flosstube, and one day she mentioned Brenda and the Cereal Starter. And she said, if you love cross stitch, you have to go watch them. They are amazing. Go watch their channel right now. I mean, it's Lori Holt. You gotta listen to her, right? So I went and watched their channel, and I started to learn a little bit about cross stitch. Like I said, my daughter had just moved back in the house, and she said, Mom, you should cross stitch with me. What? I mean, my young adult daughter wants to do something with me. Okay, moms of young adults, you know that's pretty special. And so I said, I mean, sure. I had done some hand embroidery when I was in my teens, early 20s. And I was like, I could try that. And so she said, I have all the supplies. You would just need a pattern. I said, okay, I can do that. And I said, you know what? I think I have a free pattern, but wait, maybe I know about a pattern I'd like to buy. So the reason I knew a pattern that I wanted to buy is because that summer, which was the summer of 2022, she had moved back in after being gone about a year and a half. I was working on making a mini swoon wall hanging. And this is one of my favorite wall hangings. Like I said, my own items often don't get quilted. Being a long arm owner, I find myself quilting more for others than for myself. And so this tends to just hang on my wall right as is. This is actually the mini swoon wall hanging. It's a thimble blossom pattern, and it's made with the Nantucket summer fabric. If you love these colors, take note, because Moto's re-releasing this fabric line this summer, and it is absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna turn it just a little bit. I wanna show you this block. If you notice in this block, there's actually a little bit of a summery green in this flower. The Nantucket summer quilt line is actually a dark blue, a medium blue, and that beautiful summery green. And just to clarify, the pattern that I made that from, this is Thimble Blossoms, and it's the mini swoon block. So as you can see, it's just supposed to be a wall hanging. You can make a whole bunch of these 8-inch blocks if you want and turn it into a king size quilt, but there are other options for that as well. So check those out before you decide to do that with this one. What did that have to do with cross stitch? Is that a squirrel? So I was working on that, and so I also knew about this. And this is another Thimble Blossom pattern. This is called Stitchville, and it is actually a cross stitch pattern. At the time, on Fat Quarter Shop's cross stitch videos, their Flosstube, they were taking a different designer's barn star, and they were doing it in different colors every month so that they had a seasonal monthly display to swap out. And I decided, well, I think what I want to do is buy the Thimble Blossom one and do that with her swoon block. And I did. So my daughter said, you know, I've got the colors, Mom, don't worry about it. She gave me a piece of 14 count 8-inch, gave me a needle, and we picked 2 blues and a green, and I just stitched that thing right up. I would love to show it to you. In fact, I'm going to try to find a picture and put it right here. I finished it on a board that I probably got at Hobby Lobby. It might have been Walmart or Michael's. And I gifted that to a lovely lady who had been encouraging me as I had been posting pictures of that on social media. Her name's Dorothy, and she's just the absolute sweetest. And we all know encouragement can make all the difference in our lives, right? So I stitched that up and I thought, well, I am really liking this journey. And so my daughter said, well, what do you want to do next? And I said, you know, I really love Bonnie and Camille, and I'm starting a new quilt by them. I'm working on a quilt in this Bonnie and Camille Quilt Bee book. I actually have the kit to make this lovely kit on the front, but the one that I was actually working on is the one that's actually called Quilt Bee. And I failed to put a Post-it note there. So it wasn't too hard to find though. So I'm working on this quilt. This quilt right here is made out of blocks that pieces or all of the block were sent into Camille Roskelly, and she assembled them into a Quilt quilt. Because what is a Quilt Bee quilt? It's a quilt that many quilters worked on, whether they all made the blocks or like each person made one block, maybe they all helped to hand quilt it, but it brings together women and their love of fabric, needle, and thread. And so that's the theme that you're gonna kind of see in this video from me. And this is probably about the end of the quilt talk. So hopefully if you're a cross stitcher and you're only here for the cross stitch, hopefully you stuck around this far. So at the back of this book, now I did remember to put a post-it note on this one, so yay me for that. At the back of this quilt is a cross stitch. And if you notice, it's just like that Quilt Bee sampler quilt that's on the front of the book. And so this was designed by Camille, and this is Camille holding it. It was stitched in Cosmo Floss. Cosmo is a super bright floss. It's similar to DMC. It is a different brand. I want to say Cosmo is Japanese. Please don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure. But Cosmo just wasn't quite as easy for me to get, and so I went ahead and I pulled some DMCs to match. I didn't have a great system for storing floss. Again, I'm brand new to cross stitching. We all start somewhere, and I pulled my DMCs. It is also charted in DMC. They're on floss bobbins. They are the cardboard DMC ones. You can label them, but actually, as you see, this one broke. And so you can label them with the floss number on them, and you just hang them on a ring. Keeps everything nice and handy. These are the pieces that I have started using, and they're hooked here so I can pull off new ones. Wasn't a perfect system, but it was the only system I knew at the time, and it got me started, right? And I have to say, I love these bright colors. So that's where I started next, and that's a pretty big project. Now this is on 14 count Aida. I have no idea where it came from, probably Walmart. And I started this stitch. You can see the colors are just absolutely gorgeous. Very bright, very rainbow-like. I love the teals that are in this little design right here, but you can also see that I stopped working on it. What happened? Well, this has a lot of memories in it. I was working on this in the late summer, fall of 2022, which is when I started cross stitching. And I actually spent some time working on this when I was at my father-in-law's house. And I spent some time with my brother-in-law and my husband and my father-in-law that summer, because we did ultimately lose my father-in-law. And I was stitching on this by his bed on his last day. And you know, it has so many memories in it, right? However, there's a journey. There's a journey in any craft we take. Very few of us just jump in, know everything, and don't have to learn anything at all, right? You gotta learn something. You can't know what you don't know. And so I didn't know a whole lot, and I didn't know how many threads to use. But I really, at the time, liked the look of this. And to be honest, I still like the look of this. But I used 3 threads. And while it looks beautiful, when you start stitching in some of these dense areas, it gets really tight. And it got really hard to pull the needle through. So I kind of stopped. I don't want to get rid of it. I used to still stitch it on it in the car occasionally, but it has, like I said, it has so many memories attached. So what do? So I've made a decision. I'm going to plug forward a little bit longer, and I'm going to pull some of the small motifs, and I'm going to put them here. I'm going to finish this star, and I'm going to make lemonade out of lemons, and I'm going to turn this into a drum. So stay tuned, because that will be coming up on a future episode, right? So now I've had 2 pieces going, one of which I have finished, and I have one of which I'm hesitating a little on, and it's getting towards the end of summer, and it's coming into Halloween. Now, I love Halloween. My daughter loves Halloween. She says Halloween is not a holiday. It is a lifestyle. So she's definitely the spooky Olive to my cute Olive, and I found a Halloween pattern that I wanted to stitch. I learned I am a seasonal stitcher. I love to stitch seasonal designs in the season. I don't care if they're finished before that season. They can be finished before the next season, right? It's no big deal. And so I started this chart. This is The Witch Next Door by Primrose Cottage. Now, I know this looks a little different than their usual chart. This is one of their PDF print-offs. I was apparently impatient and decided that I wanted it immediately. And so that's why it looks the way it does. I didn't make a copy of it. Now, this chart is gorgeous if you love Halloween. I love the witch. I love her clothes on the clothesline. I love that there's even things in the window. You've got the cauldron, you've got her little potions. This spoke to me. And you will learn that this was the beginning of a Primrose Cottage obsession. So I collect Primrose Cottage patterns. Remember, collecting and stitching are two different hobbies. I collect, but I also do like to stitch their things. In fact, I've gotten so hooked on Primrose Cottage that I learned that they do a mystery box 3 times a year. If you haven't done one of their mystery boxes, they are so amazing. They have a drinking vessel in each mystery box. Drinking vessel, you say? That's not a term that we often use. What is a drinking vessel? Well, a drinking vessel could be a lovely tumbler. A drinking vessel could also be a lovely cauldron coffee mug. So I have a little bit of a glare. I'm trying to see if we can get some of that glare off so you can kind of read it. This says Stitcher's Brew, and this was in their 2024 Halloween mystery box that Primrose Cottage released on their website. And I am so glad I have this. I don't drink out of it. This makes a fabulous Ort box. I can also put those little crinkly, I don't know what you call them, those little crinkly papers, doodads, and then you put like a little pillow on top. Lindsay showed us how to do that, how to do that and put it in our little stitching area, and it's adorable, but let's be real, I use it for Orts. It's great. So I stitched that halfway. Where is it? I have no idea. I did something that I didn't know it was going to be problematic until it was problematic a little bit too late. And so I stitched it on a piece of this natural flax 14 count Aida. Where is it, you say? Good question. The issue that I had is that my white wasn't, I actually still have my floss ring. So these were the lovely colors from it. And I was mostly stitching it in DMC at the time, stitching as progression. I have went from 14 count Aida, that's white, to 14 count Aida, that's natural. And so at the time, again, DMC, I even apparently had some iris floss that probably came out of my daughter's stash. I did later get the called for Weeks Dye Works, Classic Color Works, whatever it was called for. Looks like it was a mix of Weeks Dye Works, Classic Color Works, and General Arts. But the issue that I had is this white did not show up very well on here. It looks like it would. It seems like it's gonna be great. And I started in the middle, which was the top of this house, and I stitched the roof, and I stitched into the windows, and I started stitching the white. And I realized it's not showing up super well. By this time, I have evolved enough to join some cross-stitch groups on Facebook, and I was feeling very excited. So I asked, I was brave, and I said, hey, what do you do when your white doesn't show? Do you give up? Do you find a new fabric? What do you do? Now, some people had suggested that I could take and I could backstitch with gray down the side, and I considered that. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I had stitched all the way down the house. I had stitched over to the tree and up the tree, and the fabric is gone. If I had to take a guess, I was watching a well-known Flosstuber who she says when she decides that she is going to not finish something, she does not pick it out, and she doesn't throw her whole piece of fabric away, right? Like you got a piece of fabric. Man, you can't really see my hands there. She doesn't really throw the whole piece of fabric away. What she does is she cuts off that section. She cuts that section to make sure she has to stop, and she throws it away. Now, I do know that sometimes she does the idea of you take a partial finish and you turn it into a smaller piece, but if it's not even worth that, she ditches it. If I had to take a guess, that's probably what I did. That's okay though. I still have my floss, and I, at some point, got a great piece of fabric. And if I have to guess, it's not labeled, but based upon the look of it, this is probably a 40 count Weeks Dye Works tin roof or the old Confederate gray. And I will stitch that again someday, and it will be glorious, and it will hang up on my wall. And so we've now gone from 3 started, 1 finished, 2 abandoned. I'm learning how to abandon things fastly, and we need another finish. This is all in just a couple months though. It's not a big deal. And we're out of the Halloween season and we're into the Christmas season, and a Fat Quarter Shop who I was following released a free mystery stitch along, and It was called Christmas Time, and it was this right here. And I decided I was gonna go along with it. I had only seen the first part, looked like my style. I went ahead and grabbed some more of that flax Aida that I had, that 14 count Aida. I think it was a really big piece, and I used part of it and I stitched it up and I got myself another finish. So I'm 2 for 2 now. And I really like this piece. It turned out so well, those colors on this natural flax color. And I don't know the exact brand of this. I'm sure it's just from actually probably Michael's, but the called for DMC were just stunning on it. And at the time, I just took it and I put a magnet in each corner and I stuck it on my refrigerator just in time for Christmas, and I enjoyed it. My husband was like, cool, looks great. Remember, nobody's really still doing a whole lot of massive celebrating, even though it's 2020, 2022. So it was fine. Nobody was judging me, and it just stayed there on my refrigerator. Somewhere around that time period, probably when I was stitching that, Lori Holt had said, go watch Brenda and Laura, the Serial Starter. And while I was watching Brenda and Laura, the Serial Starter, one day they talked about the Attic Needlework. They referred to it as their happy place. I believe they had just been on a retreat to the attic. Now, when I say just been on a retreat to the attic, I mean on that Flosstube episode. Because when I was referred to them, I watched a couple of their recent ones, and then I realized they have a lot of videos. And I went back and started binge watching from the beginning. And so I was like, a cross stitch store here in Mesa, Arizona. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm gonna need to go check this out. So I took myself over to the Attic Needlework with my 14 count Aida projects and back quarter shop knowledge, and went over there and walked in, and lo and behold, there are samplers everywhere. Now I might be a little bit biased, but it is a truly beautiful store. There are so many samplers. There's so much fabric. There is Aida, Lugana, linen, so many beautiful overdyed linens, and silks galore. Well, I wasn't ready to progress too far, but I was really enjoying it. And one day I signed up for their newsletter, and I got an email that said, don't forget, tomorrow is our Christmas party. So we're in December. And I'm like, Christmas party tomorrow? Okay, I can do that. And it said, we're gonna do an ornament exchange. I didn't have an ornament stitched. But if I wanted to be in the ornament exchange, I had to bring an ornament, and you had to put it in a bag, and you put it in a pile, and you all get you get your name drawn or a number drawn or something, and you get to go pick one, right? So I'm like, well, I can figure something out. I go back to my daughter's stash. I pull a little piece of 14 count Aida. I pulled a couple of pinks, teals, and I figured out how to write the words, have a cup of cheer, and I stitched this piece, this little coffee cup here in pink and aqua, and have a cup of cheer above and below it, and I put it in a little wooden hoop, and I put fabric on the back, and I was good to go. Had to be something quick, right? And the next day, I went to the attic. At the attic, I made some friends. I sat next to 2 lovely gals who were my local stitching friends, and we've been friends ever since. I got to see a lot of great things on the wall. I bought some samplers, and I received the most fabulous ornament in that exchange. And so this is called Let It Snow, right? This beautiful cardinal. Now come to find out, this was stitched by a gal who worked at the attic. She still works there. Her name is Sherry. And I just got lucky enough to get this ornament. And when all the ornaments had been opened, I realized that mine was the only one on Aida. To clarify, Aida is wonderful. You should stitch on what you love. It does not matter what you stitch on. But I saw all these lovely tiny pieces, and I was a little bit jealous, and I felt kind of bad. And I actually went over to the lovely gal who got my ornament, and I told her, I said, just so you know, I'm a brand new cross stitcher. I don't know how to stitch on linen yet, and so I'm really sorry that I stitched yours on Aida. And she said, that's okay. She said, I was looking at your finishing, And I had not seen one finished like that before, and I was admiring it. And it's really cool that I explained, that I had taken the motif from something and charted the words. And she was like, that's really cool that you did that. And I made 2 more friends. So my anxiety about not having something as fabulous as everyone else's actually got me some friends that day. And those lovely gals, they know who they are, and I'm still friends with them as well. But that was inspiration, right? You go from, am I going to stay on Ada or am I going to work my way up? So I decided I was going to work my way up. And I went up to Lugana. I decided I wasn't going to jump straight into linen. I had already heard from the Fat Quarter Shop Flosstube some of the differences in Ada versus Lugana versus linen. And I knew that the threads in Lugana tend to be a little bit more even and a little bit easier to stitch on. Plus the counts are a little bit lower and a little bit easier to see. And I did not have good magnification or a good light yet. I was just using my own regular glasses when I was stitching on Ada, and I was just using cheap readers that I would have my glasses on, and I put those on, and I was just using that when I started trying to stitch on Lugana. So I was trying to figure out what did I want to stitch, and once again, Fat Quarter Shop, I promise I do stop saying their name. They released a free chart by Lori Holt, and it's called I'm Just Saying. And one of the great things about this chart, we're going to slide it up here, right? It's called I'm Just Saying, and it's on a free download on the Fat Quarter Shop website as a PDF. And it is a uppercase, lowercase alphabet with numbers. And so you can start to chart a few things of your own if you want. But it also had an actual chart on it. And so I'm sliding it in this way. I'm going to scoot over a little. And the reason I'm doing this is because, as you can see, there's a little bit of a chart over here. So there was a full chart, and it's called, it says, I cannot count my day complete until needle thread and fabric meet. Again, that is summing up what my life is. And so I decided I was going to advance from 14 count Ada. I got myself some black anchor thread. Now, I love black DMC. It's great. I love black anchor even more. Please don't ask me the number. I am blanking of it at the moment. But I went ahead and I grabbed a spool of black anchor from Joann's. I don't know if I purchased the Lugana from the Attic or if I actually got it at Hobby Lobby. My Hobby Lobby sometimes has a few pieces of like Lugana or a basic linen. Not exotic, but a couple. It's good to know if you don't have a local needle shop near you, but you do have a Hobby Lobby. And I stitched that. The reason I stitched it in black is because my house has a lot of white, black, and gray. I actually express my love of color through quilting. You'll notice, I'm sure over time, that I wear a lot of black, that I have a lot of black accessories. And so my house, the white, black, and gray, I thought this would look very modern, and I absolutely love it. Did I frame it? No. I had not evolved that far into my progression as a cross stitcher yet. But what I did realize is I wanted another piece to go with it. When I had been at the Attic in December, I had purchased a sampler chart. This was my very first antique sampler reproduction chart that I purchased. And not shocking, it is by Needlework Press. And this is called Harriet Ann Hewson, 1843. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I love to pink things up. I didn't stitch this in pink. I didn't get this because it was pink, because clearly it's not. I didn't get this because it looked modern, but I absolutely loved it. I do love stitching letters and alphabets. I feel like I will never get tired of that. And I got it for this right here. And this phrase says, I'm looking at another version down here. It says, art has taught my willing fingers skill to write without paper, ink, or quilt. Because they were writing with floss and needle and linen. And that's what I was starting to do. And so I connected with this young lady right here. I might sometimes change things. I don't change them because there's anything inherently wrong with it. I think antique reproductionists put a lot of work and time into reproducing them exactly as is if they choose. And such as Needlework Press, they do an amazing job of reproduction. They do an amazing job of matching colors with their floss. But again, I had that black and white that I had already stitched, and I thought, is that upside down? That's upside down. I thought I would like something to coordinate with this. I can be a little bit matchy-matchy sometimes. And so when I stitched Harriet Ann Hewson, first of all, I did leave her name off and I put my own name, but I stitched it in black and I made some adjustments. The biggest reason I adjusted the length of Harriet Ann Hewson is because I realized that it's almost the exact same size as my other piece. And so I thought, well, if they're the same size, I can frame them the same. They'll be in the same size frames. I can hang them together. I have the perfect wall that I can hang them on and they will look darling together. And so I left off Harriet's name. I stitched mine in over 1. The phrase was already in over 1. And this set of, I call them 4 patches. I mean, that's what they are in the quilt world, so I call them 4 patches. But they're over 1. My name is over 1. I put the year. This is supposed to be a crown, I believe. It's over 1. The little dog is over 1. And I mean, how could I leave the little black dog off, right? I have a little black dog. I went ahead and stitched sampler. Now again, I was sticking with that Lugana. I was doing really well, using 2 threads over 2 strands of floss over 2 threads until I got down here to this over 1. We had to progress again, right? You can't stay stuck. We want to grow. And so for the over 1, I did 1 thread, 1 floss over 1 thread. The only catch is when I went to do a sampler, I was in this habit of this 1 thread, and I forgot that up here for the 4-sided stitch, I had done 2 threads, and down here for the 4-sided stitch, I did 1 thread. No big deal, looks great, I'm in love with it, and if I hadn't told you, you probably wouldn't have noticed. So this is my coordinating piece, and I need to take these into the lovely framer at the Attic, Sandy. She does a gorgeous job, which you'll see in a minute, and I should get these framed and get them on my wall. And it will make one of my stitchy friends very proud of me to get a little bit more framed. So I had grown. I've already, in a couple months, I've went from Ada to Lugana. I've done some over 1 stitching. I have gone down to 1 strand, and now I am ready to start linen. There might have been another piece in there somewhere, but we're just gonna move on to the first linen piece that I did. This isn't necessarily going to be every single piece that I did. It's just going to kind of show you my progression to give you a heads up. So I decided move it on to linen, and around that time was Nashville Needlework Market of 2023. Nashville Needlework Market is so exciting. It's exciting if you've been a longtime cross stitcher. It's even more exciting if you've never experienced Nashville Needlework Market. There are so many new charts that come out, amazing charts. So much linen, fabric, floss, you name it, right? How can you even pick? Well, I found one that fit this theme that I've been going with, and it was a JBW design. It's called Stitching in the Round. I liked the stitching theme. It went with the fact that I had actually just stitched another piece. I had stitched a Valentine's piece, and so I was still in that February Valentine-y pink mood. I mean, let's be real, I always love pink, but it was a little bit seasonal. And so I stitched it on 32 count platinum linen. There is a right side up if I figure it out. Okay, so this is right side up. Now, I've advanced. I am no longer using just solid color floss. I used a fancy floss. I was feeling quite fancy too. I didn't use the called for color. It was cherry tomato, I believe. I went a little more pink. I went with ripe melon. You can see I got a little bit nervous because I almost ran out. The pink is actually the called for DMC, and the called for DMC, it's this light pink confetti. And if you look, I was already really fussy about my backs. I made sure I was doing those neat, but this is the first time I'd done all this confetti stitching. I'm hoping it's showing up because I know it's really light on this light fabric. But so I decided I was not gonna do like all those individual, and I didn't really carry any of the dark pink, but I did carry my stitching for that light pink. I wanna insert something. I heard Tula Pink a few years ago. She's a quilter that I love. I love her bright colored fabric. She said, if your friends judge you by the back of your quilt, they're not really your friends. You know what? She's right. That is 100% true. Disclaimer, if your long armor gives you tips about the back of your quilt, you might want to notice. But your friends, nah, same with cross stitching. And if your friends want to celebrate your neat backs with you because you want to show them off, great. But you should never judge your friends by their backs. Cross stitching, is about making beautiful things for our homes or doing something that makes us happy. Some of us like finished products that are framed up on our wall, like my friend Audrey. Some of us are process stitchers that we just want to stitch in the season and we don't really care if we get a finished item or not. I'm a little bit of both. So after that, I am feeling very fancy. I've gotten the overdyed floss bug. I've decided I want to try even more on linen. And I heard that when you go up to 36 count linen, you only have to use one strand. And I thought, well, that might be kind of fun because I was already aware of railroading. I was trying to railroad my floss and that was taking a little extra time. I do like things to be neat. I might be a little bit fussy, a little bit of a perfectionist. Those can be good qualities or bad qualities, depending on how they come out. And I had been working on all the blue Nantucket summer fabric, so blue was on my brain, and I got me a skein of blue corn. And I got this chart from Nashville Needlework Market, and it was the Cuckoo Bird Sampler. There was a reason I got this chart. This chart is actually dedicated from Cecilia of Heart and Hand to Brenda and Laura, the cereal starter. And she very specifically on the back says, designer's note for Brenda and Laura, who inspire creativity and connection in our community. Remember, I only knew about the Attic Needlework because Brenda and Laura had told me it was an awesome place and I should go there, right? So not only do I get this chart, but I had this blue corn at home, and I don't even know why I had it at home. And Laura, she got this chart and she ran with it. Our cereal starter started this and finished it monogamously, immediately, like in a week. And that was pretty amazing, right? And so I decided I was gonna use that blue corn too, and I was gonna stitch this up. And not only did I stitch it on 36 count platinum with the overdyed fancy cotton floss, I got it framed. It's my first, sadly my only, fully framed finished. And so this is the Cuckoo Bird Sampler. I absolutely love this. I do have glass on it. At the time, I had 4 dogs in my house, and so there was dog fur that we were trying to keep out of my quilt room already. I didn't want to be worried about my frame cross stitch pieces. Plus, we live in Phoenix, Arizona, and so it's dusty here, and I just thought that would be a really good way to protect it. Sandy at the Attic helped me pick out this frame. You can see the lovely logo on the back. Nope, I have not hung it yet. It actually sits on a shelf and is displayed in my stitchy area, but I truly love this frame. I wanted blue to match the blue corn. The blue of the beige of the frame actually matches the platinum linen really well. I do remember the frame ended up being a little bit more beige than we expected when we picked it out from the sample, and Sandy actually called me and said, hey, I just want to make sure you know that this frame came in a little bit more beige, a little less dominant blue, but that the beige matches your linen perfectly and it looks fabulous. And I said, you know what? Sounds great. Let's go with it. And this is a delightful piece. I truly love it. Now I made an adjustment. Once again, I added the names Brenda and Laura. This piece sits in my, like I said, in a stitchy area to remind me that cross stitchers provide creativity and inspiration. So one of the reasons why I decided to do a floss tube is I've been consuming a lot of floss tube over the last few years. And I decided it was time for me to contribute back a little. So this is my contribution, in addition to some other contributions you'll know about later. But this was a really good start, this floss tube right now. And this piece was fabulous for my first frame piece. And yes, my dear friend Audrey, I will get some more framed. So we'll put that up for the moment. And where do you go after that? You know what? It's okay to take a step back sometimes. So just because you're stitching on linen doesn't mean you always have to stitch on linen. Just because you stitch on 56 count linen doesn't mean you always have to stitch on 56 count linen. Just because you stitch on 14 count Aida doesn't mean you can't try something new. And I had a scrap piece of Lugana that someone had given me. And once again, I lost the chart. Oh, hold on. I got the chart. And once again, I have stitched a Primrose Cottage piece, another PDF download. I tend to buy a lot of paper charts. Every once in a while, I do get a little bit impatient and do a PDF download. And this is called Be Nice. It says, be nice or buzz off. And I wanted this because I wanted it to hang at the entrance to my long arm room. My original intention was to frame it, and it will still get framed. And I wanted to hang it at the entrance to my long arm room as a reminder, I'm in here working, so if you can't come in and say something nice, then buzz off. It was for my husband, basically. So he's a really good husband. Don't take that wrong. But I stitched that in mostly called for colors. I did brighten the teals just a little bit. And this is my Be Nice or Buzz Off. So you'll see I continued to really love Primrose Cottage. And I have a good friend right now who is so excited because I stitched in a little bit of yellows and golds. They aren't typically a color that I stitch in a lot, so she's gonna be super excited. And it'll really match my long arm room back here with this Lori Holt quilt. And you can't see it, but over on the side over here, I have a bee block that's made from a Lori Holt pattern. And Lori Holt is, of course, bee in my bonnet. And so it all just coordinates really well. Around that time, I saw a chart that I absolutely loved. And I apologize for the squirrel. There is someone who keeps walking by my window. So I found a chart that I really loved and I wanted to track it down, and I was referred to a Facebook group called Homespun Needleworkers. Sadly, I missed the chart. It was this. It's the Scarlet House, a sampler for all seasons. The Homespun Needlework group is a fabulous cross-stitch group on Facebook. Julie Krasavi is the person who runs the group, and she arranges exclusive kits through designers, fabric dyers, and a cross-stitch store for the members of the group. You have to be a member of the group to buy it. Now, typically, most of the charts that are released in that group will come out later as a chart only. No guarantee exactly when, but they do usually come out. And luckily for me, this one did, because I really wanted this chart. And this is a Scarlet House chart, like I said, a sampler for all season. But what I love about it is it says, when the weather is hot, rainy, or cold, I look at my chart and stitch as I'm told. Most people in the quilt and cross stitch world will tell you they get most of their stuff done in the winter when it's cold. Well, Tanya and I, and quite a few others, live here in Arizona, and in the desert, the low desert parts of Arizona, Phoenix, Mesa, Gilbert, Chandler, etc., it's hot in the summer and it's beautiful in the winter. So we get our stitching and our quilting done in the winter. So right now we're actually starting to come into beautiful weather, and I may not get quite as much quilting done because I want to spend a little bit of time outside. And I just love that phrase because it reflected it. I missed it, but I couldn't be sad for too long, because since I had joined the group, I learned about another chart that had come out. Just putting a note back on that. I learned about another chart that had come out, and that was Whilst Iris Naps, Mary Gibson, I think. This kit was released in the Homespun Needlework group in April of 2023. I'm still just a little over 6 months into my cross-stitch journey. I've already stitched on a couple pieces on linen. I got a piece framed. My frame piece actually wasn't framed quite yet when I bought this. I'm in this wonderful cross-stitch group. I've already discovered FOMO for kits in this group, and I've already fallen in love with samplers because of my association with a local needlework shop. And so I saw this chart, and this chart really meant something to me. If you keep an eye on my Flosstube as I progress, you're gonna see more about this chart. I'm not gonna show you the actual stitching today, but I'm gonna tell you why it's special and why you're gonna see it. So Mary Gibson stitched this chart. She put her last stitches in on April 18th of 1828. That was almost 200 years ago. And since this was sold in April of 2023, it was 195 years after she put her last stitches in. Well, April 18th happens to be my birthday. And in April of 2023, I turned 45. And when this will be 200 years old in April of 2028, I will turn 50. And so I got the lovely Mary Gibson to stitch in honor of my upcoming 50th birthday and her 200th birthday. And I will be working on this periodically over the next few years. I call her my 5-year stitch. And we'll get her done, and I'll put the last stitches in on that day. The next chart that I got from that group, I do actually have stitching to show you. So before we get there though, I have one more to show you before that, and that's a lovely chart, Summer Sweets Pin Keep by Scattered Seed Samplers. Now, by the time I stitched this chart, I had been hired to help out at the Attic Needlework by Jean Lee. I work part-time, 1 day a week, and I help out full-time during retreat weeks. It worked out really well for Jean and myself. It allowed me to get out of the house a little bit. It allowed me to be in a great, fabulous community, and it allowed her to have a little extra help around retreats and on Saturdays when she could really use some help by someone who could schedule those weeks off, but didn't necessarily need to work full-time. It was a win-win for both of us. And I'm coming to the attic now, and I'm seeing all these beautiful linens. And so I went from stitching on regular Zweigart linen to now I need to try over-dyed linen. And I had the lovely pleasure of meeting Michelle of Tabby Cat Linens at the very first week that I worked at the attic, because if you're gonna start at a cross-stitch store, you should definitely start the week of a retreat, which is trial by fire. And hey, it's a lot of fun, but you learn a lot. And since I got to meet Michelle that week and I learned about her linens, I learned about her Tabby Cat Creme Brulee linen. And this is actually a washed piece of Tabby Cat of creme brulee. I just want to tell you that if you wash a piece of creme brulee and it does not turn out just like this, please don't yell at me, okay? You take a risk anytime you wash over-dyed linens. But this was intentionally washed, and what it did, it has to do with her process. The last process on creme brulee isn't entirely set. I think she said something like it's a 2-part process, and that's why. And so, but what it does is it slightly fades that darker color. And instead of having really light color and really dark color, I toned that down and darkened up the white a little bit, and it creates this lovely pinky peach linen that I just absolutely love. And it was perfect for this bird with the strawberry. And I really love this little bird and his really cute little strawberry. And I did brighten up the green and the red on this strawberry. I just wanted them to pop off a little bit more. And then originally these hearts were supposed to be navy, which would look darling on a primitive piece. Great idea. But for me, since I was using this peachy pink linen, I went ahead and added this additional corally pink floss for those hearts, which just kind of gave them this little ghost effect. And this is one of my favorites. I have every intention of finishing this. It's never going to be a frame piece. It was never intended to be. But I have an image in my head and I haven't figured out exactly how to pull it off. But one day it's going to be done and I'm just going to adore it. Until then, as my progress, I started stitching on over-dyed linen, and let me tell you, I love over-dyed linen. I have not stitched on too much that's not over-dyed linen. Since then, I just really have loved it. So from there, I'm now working at the attic, and Jean Lee loved to stitch on 56 count linen. That was one of her absolute favorites. Actually, it was almost all she stitched on for the last however many years. So when the Homespun Needlework Facebook group came out with another exclusive, I decided to be brave because it was, first of all, it was a monochrome chart. And so it wasn't, 30 silk colors. And I decided that not only was I going to get silk, but I was going to get 56 count with Swass or Fiend. And that was for the lovely Hannah Wilson chart. And again, this is a needlework press chart. This was actually just a release to the public at Nashville Market 2025. And so you should be able to get this from your local needlework store now. But I love, again, it's alphabet. How can you go wrong with a good alphabet? I love these funky letters that I'm gonna have to figure out why these letters are here because I don't know anything about those letters yet. It's perfect to learn new things, right? Nobody knows everything. And so I'll have to do a little research on that now that I'm far enough to be like, hey, wait, let's learn about this history. But I did this, my baby start, on 56 count. I do know this linen name. Give me 1 second. This is 56 count Eureka linen by Fox and Rabbit. And it is stitched with Swass or Fiend 2627, which is a very dark brown. It can almost read like a soft black. And there's my baby 56 count start, right? I didn't get very far. That is a big chart. I have a big piece of linen. That's it, but it was a start. I'm not sure I even count it as a whip. Anytime I have a start, that's like this, that was really more about FOMO or just wanting to try something. I don't always consider it an active whip, and sometimes it just goes back into my kitted items. But for this video, I thought it was really important because, like I said, it was my first silk stitch. It was my first 56 count stitch, and I might finish it someday. I might not. If I choose not to finish it someday, I have beautiful floss and I have beautiful fabric and nobody's sad, and I have some great alphabets in case I ever need a great alphabet to use for a chart. So we're good. We're good. I did finish a piece on 56 count though with Swasserfine. I do not know the Swasserfine number. I can tell you the linen. So at some retreat at the Attic, I was with, it actually probably might have been Bristol. I bought a piece of 56 count Seraphim Moonshadow, and I bought a lovely pink Swasserfine. I was with my new friend Shelly, and we'd put them together and we thought they were really pretty. And I decided for January of 2023, a little over a year into my cross stitch journey, that for my January blessing sampler that year, January of 2024, if I accidentally said 2023, I decided I was gonna stitch Eugenie Sachet by Reflet de Soie, and forgive me if any of that is pronounced incorrectly. And there are two charts in here. There's one that has a large formal looking alphabet, and there's one that has a little more everyday alphabet, and I love the symmetry of the smaller chart. It's totally my style. It was perfect for a blessing sampler. It was easy to stitch in the month of January, and brave soul that I was, and new adventurer, and progressing in my cross stitch journey, I stitched it for my blessing sampler. And I have no idea what I'm gonna do with it. So it is not fully finished. It's still on the piece of linen, but I've done it. I finished a piece on 56 count. It's actually not the only piece I finished on the 56 count, but it is the first one. And so I was very, very proud of it. And I should do something with it. We'll have to think about that later. What can I do with this beautiful little piece? Maybe I'll put it as like the top of a beautiful box. I don't know that I would frame it. It's a really petite piece, and so it just seems a little petite to frame. Who knows? For now, it'll just have to be pretty. I mean, what's left to conquer after that? I'm stitching on 46 count. I moved up to a 46, well, technically down from 56 count, but I stitched a Plum Street Samplers 46 count piece. It's called the Corgi Caboodle. I'll put the picture of the chart right here. I don't know where my chart is at the moment. I don't typically get rid of my charts, so I'm not quite sure what happened to it. But again, I feel like I say this too often. I don't adjust every chart that I stitch, but sometimes I have a goal for a chart. Like when I see it, I have a vision in my head, and it's just for me personally. And so for this Corgi Caboodle chart, I did alter it, and the reason is because I have my little black Chihuahua, and my daughter's Corgi was living here, and so I changed it to be one Corgi, and I made the Corgi puppy look like my little Chihuahua. And so this is stitched on a 46 count linen, and it is stitched in mostly called for DMC, and I did the finishing on it myself. So I have quite a bit of this, I think it's a poppy cotton fabric. I think this is actually the right way for it, but it's a lovely green strawberry fabric, and it's a Sherry and Chelsea fabric on the inside. I think it was from their Sincerely Yours line. It was a Valentine's line. I used the inside cotton to make my little connector. I don't know what you call that little connector flap. And this was the first time that I made cording. And so it's a little bit on the thin side, but overall it's not bad. I really love the flat fold finishes. I used a little bit of Lady Dot Creates, and it turned out absolutely fabulous. And one of the nice things about flat folds is you can just kind of tuck them in a box if you have little seasonal ones. They don't take up that much storage. They're super easy to pull out, and they're great for just small pieces, especially if it's, you know, seasonal decor. I don't know that I want to do something like that with Eugenie Sachet. She seems a little bit elegant, but I could be wrong. We'll see what I do. But this one, it does not matter how many beautiful, big, high count linen samplers with silk floss that I stitch. This lovely little piece is always going to be one of my favorites because it represents my girls. And so it's always really fun when you get to do that. And I did have the pleasure of getting to show this to Paulette and show her my excitement. And that was really fun. So I do love this, and it sits out all the time in my house. So let's see. I feel like I had done all the things. I had started something for my anniversary. I had started something on a vacation. I had learned about all the starts. I didn't really want a ton of whips, to be perfectly honest. I know I can hear some of you laughing right now. I would prefer to be a mostly monogamous stitcher. Like, I would prefer to have one really big piece that I'm working on, maybe have a Christmas piece or a Halloween piece that I work on all year because they're a little big and you know you're not going to finish them just in the season, and then maybe have like a little seasonal piece that you stitch during the season for each season. But I really like that idea of one big one. But there are so many fabulous charts out there, and like all of you, I get FOMO too, and I really want to start all the things. And you know, my friends say, hey, let's do a start along. And one of my friends, Audrey, she likes to create, you know, that 12-month start along where you do a little bit each month for 12 months, and at the end you've got it. I started one with her. It's not done, she's done. But what I kind of do now is I realize that it's okay to start it. It's okay to have you know, that Hannah Wilson, it's okay to have this little start. And if I don't have time to work on it, because really I'm focusing on something else, but I did something little like this because I didn't want FOMO. I already had the kit anyway. What difference does it make if it has a baby start or not? But rather than add the mental energy of tracking this as a start, if I put this up and I just put it back in my kitted stash, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm talking like when I do that, this is probably like the biggest start that I have on it. Sometimes I only have maybe 40 stitches in it, maybe I have 200, but even that's probably rare. So I had done pretty much all the things by then. I'd stitched in overdyed silk floss. I had stitched in 103s. I'd stitched in Swasserfine. I had a bunch of finishes. I had done some swaps in the Homespun Needlework group, and I had received some beautiful projects. I'd made some beautiful projects. And so where do you go from there? Well, I got asked if I would consider doing a stitch along, if I would lead a stitch along. And I decided that I was okay with that. I really liked the chart, and I had a feeling the only way I was going to ever fully finish this chart was if I was the stitch along leader. Before I get too far, I'm just gonna give you a heads up. I'm not gonna show you everything about this today. I'm just gonna show you what it is. And that's because this lovely gal deserves a floss tube of her own. And so we'll get there. Stick around, keep watching me. We'll talk more about her. But for today, I'm just gonna show you the chart. And I will tell you that that is Charlotte Warrington, 1838 by Needlework Press. Charlotte is the BAP in the Homespun Needlework group. BAP stands for Big Awesome Project. And if you've been in there, if you've seen any posts that say, attention BAPsters, that's probably from me, Olive Green. And so that's because I am your stitch along leader. I call myself more of a cheerleader. We've had some beautiful finishes in there, absolutely beautiful. We had some gals finish this so fast. I don't know how they slept. So we'll talk about her more later, but that was the next place that I evolved to in my journey, is I was the stitch along leader for the Charlotte Warrington sow. Shortly after I started that, I got approached by some designers to start doing some model stitching. And so I'm gonna shift just for a second, sorry about that. And I stitched a few models. Some of them have not been released yet to the public, and so I'm not really gonna show those, but that started in 2024. And so I had just been stitching, like I said, for like a little over a year and a half. And I started stitching for that, and that took away a lot of time in a good way. Like, I enjoy model stitching. I enjoy getting to stitch anything. As much as I do like to have some finishes, I'm also a little bit of a process finisher, and so that's really fun for me. And Jean was familiar with the fact that I would sometimes just pull things up and adjust it and chart it myself, or that I would chart some of my own designs. I charted in the spring of 2024, I charted a little piece to give as a table gift at a quilt retreat that I went to. And quilting's still actively going on here. And Jean was aware of that. And so when someone reached out to Jean in the summer of 2024 and said, hi, I'm looking for someone to collaborate with, to assist with some charting and maybe some model stitching, Jean came to me and she said, would you like me to give this person in our industry your name? And I said, sure, I'm okay with that. That could be quite fun. I'll really enjoy that. And so Jean gave my name to Susan Stanley. And if you're not familiar with Susan, Susan has her own Flosstube. It's called A Stitch in Time. And Susan focuses on the history of a girl and some of the things that would have been going on in her life. There's usually a story around the girl, and she talks about different things like English paper piecing, making a quilt from start to finish by hand, and she's absolutely fabulous. You should definitely go watch her. And now Susan showed this to the attendees at Sampler Symposium at the Attic at the beginning of 2025, and she has released it on her Flosstube. And so this is done from an original Berlin woolwork painting, and it was a Berlin woolwork piece, although I stitched it on 45 count legacy linen Fuller's teasel with 103 silks, and it is this lovely little piece right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and insert a picture. The original is back with Susan, and she plans to use it as a continuation of one of her projects on her Flosstube. So if you find this interesting, you should definitely go check out Susan's Flosstube. Now, I mean, that was fabulous. I absolutely loved getting to chart that. It was so much fun to stitch that. It was the first really full coverage piece that I had stitched. Now, I want to say, yes, it is full coverage, but there is a difference in stitching a dimensions full coverage piece that is huge and stitching this piece, which is, you know, roughly the size of the palm of my hand. But still, it was the first full coverage piece that I had stitched, and it was very fun. It was an honor to get to work with Susan. And for quite a while, my friends were like, what are you working on? And I'm like, secret stitching. So that was my secret stitching back in the fall. And I'm really looking forward to when Susan releases that and you all get a share in that chart as well. Then after I stitched that for Susan, I went back to model stitching a little bit. And I was asked by the lovely Linda Vinson if I would help her stitch the 3 samplers from Elizabeth Ackroyd. Linda has all 3 samplers in her collection, and it is pretty rare to find 2 samplers from the same gal and have them owned by the same designer, let alone to have 3. And so I'm going to show you the chart right here. So this is the chart. This was released at Nashville Needlework Market 2025, and it's called Elizabeth Ackroyd, and there are 3 samplers. 1 is larger, 2 are smaller, and the 2 smaller ones do have a religious theme, and the first one is an Adam and Eve sampler, and this is the one that actually made me fall in love with the trio. I did love that it was a lot of red and green because I was stitching these through the Christmas holiday and into the beginning of the year. So it kind of seemed a little bit seasonal because I didn't actually get a stitch Christmas this year. And this one says, this Adam and Eve sampler says, the serpent beguiled me and I did eat. And I thought, what a unique phrase. It's not how we always see them put on Adam and Eve samplers. In fact, I've never heard it said that way. And so I also like that Adam and Eve do have on, you know, some type of like skirt or loincloth, and the colors were just beautiful. There's also the sampler that has Jesus on the cross. I believe it just says the Savior died upon the cross. And now right now, since this just came out at Market, if you are looking for a little Lenten stitch, this Jesus on the cross chart, I mean, how much more perfect could it get, right? But the big one. So the big one, Linda called Mini Sheep. And it is called Mini Sheep because there are 27 sheep in here. And one of the really fun things about the sheep is that they're all different sizes. It's not just one and done. So you've got heavy sheep, you've got skinny sheep. It's just really fun. You've got a lovely lady up here. You've got the man with his dog down here. And it's just super exciting to stitch. Now, if you get this lovely chart from Needle Made Designs, I'm going to give you a heads up, okay? Take note if you have this chart. on Jesus on the cross, in the middle at the top, it goes up 1 stitch. Like you'll see it, but if you get in the groove and you're just stitching along, you'll miss it. So you want to note that. And then on the big one, the mini sheep, on the right lower hand side, the vine has an extra stitch in one segment. And on the left bottom, the vine has 1 additional stitch in one of the places. Otherwise, it's pretty matching and stays pretty same, making it easy to just, stitch and go along. But if you don't catch those 2 little tricks, your border isn't going to match up. And so I had already learned that her borders could be a little bit tricky by the time I got to this border. And so I counted. I already learned, and I counted them, I marked them, and I caught those 2 little places, and no big deal. Now, in clarification, I did stitch the big one. I stitched the Adam and Eve. I stitched the border of this little one, but my friend Sherry at the Attic, she actually helped me stitch the inside of this one for Linda with Linda's blessing. And so that lovely privilege to stitch these models are on display at the Attic Needlework currently. And if you watch the Attic Needlework Flosstube, you will see a recent video with Carolyn where she had Vicki and Megan Jeanette of Needlework Press and on the video, and they went around and they showed some of the different Needlework Market pieces, and these models were shown on that video. So if you want a really good picture of them, because these pictures, first of all, designers work so hard to get an accurate color picture. And then you have to worry about how does the picture print. Even though your picture looks great, that doesn't mean it's going to print just like that. And it is very, very hard to get really awesome pictures, and they work so hard. But they never look as good as the actual model. So if you get a chance, go watch that Flosstube with the Attic Needlework that has Carolyn and Vicki and Megan, and you'll see some beautiful models from Nashville Market 2025. Man, I mean, just think about it. That was just a little over 2 years. Actually, I started stitching this 2 years after I had kind of started cross stitching. When I jump in head first. You're gonna see that about me. And I like to do all the things. I like to learn all the things. I like to just try. What's the worst that can happen, right? You can make a mistake, and cross stitch mistakes are easy. You can frog those things. So what am I working on currently? I'll do a whip parade and a future Flosstube. I'll give you a little bit of heads up now. I am doing another secret stitching project that is a collaboration, and it's really fun to be working on it. And then I'm stitching a model for the Attic right now, and it is a 2025 Nashville Needlework Market release, and that is the pink pear, which is a needle book, velvet pink pear, which is a needle book, and it has this cute little hedgehog on it. And this is velvet right here, and I have my lovely floss that I'm stitching it on, right? And it's being stitched on 36 count cream puff by Miss Crescent Crown. And Sharon was dyeing linen last year. I believe she's on pause. I don't know if she's going to return to that or not, but we will have some pieces of this at the Attic. And I actually need a little bit more white. I think I just came to the end of my strand that night and was tired, but the rest of it gets filled in with Cocoa Brown, Week by Weeks Dye Works, and I have some in my stash somewhere. And then when I come over to the mushroom, and because there's that little mushroom next to him, right? The little red mushroom. Well, that's Lancaster Red, and I have some in my stash somewhere. So I need to find those 2 colors to finish him. And I have a little bit of a velvet. It's not quite the right shade of pink, so I might try to tea dye this velvet. But the goal is to get this finished up into a model and get this on display at the Attic. So forgive my little hoop marks. I do tend to stitch in a small hoop. But I do have a lot of, we won't say a lot, maybe a lot. I do have some other whips and some really fun projects that I'll get a show in a future Flosstube. Some other things to talk about. That kind of covers it for today. It was, like I said, it's just kind of a quick speed through. We all start somewhere, and I just get asked that a lot. And so I just wanted people to see that you don't just come in and typically start stitching on 56 count linen overnight. And you might, and that's okay if you do. And just because you stitch on 56 count linen doesn't mean you can't go back and stitch something else. So hopefully you saw some things that look fun. Hopefully you got a little bit of an idea of the kind of things that I do like to stitch. I I do actually do some finishing, and I do finish some of my own pieces. And so like this is a little pincushion that I made from the Charlotte Warrington chart. I wanted something to stay by me, to keep me inspired while I'm stitching on it. And I did it as, it's kind of like a mattress finish because you've got that thick side, but I did it where you see a little bit of this bottom color. I wanted to bring in that maroon. And now I know I don't necessarily want to put pins in this, but I made it as a pin keep. And so what I did is I hid a magnet in behind this flower, because if I ever were to stick a pin into there, I would not stick it right into the flower, right? That would be dumb. I would stick it anywhere but in the flower. And so I put the magnet behind there, and so that will actually allow me to just drop, you'd think I'd have a needle right here. It'll allow me to just drop my needle and have a needle minder instead of just a pin cushion. And so this sits by me. I've done some finishing on some Annie B pears. I like to make bags. I sew, I quilt, I do all the things. Makes it really fun. And I'll be back in the future to show you some other fun things that I've got going on. And until then, let's see. We like to end Flosstube with what have I been watching? And I do watch Flosstube. So let's see if I can think of all the people that I watch. I've watched all the Lori Holt Flosstube videos. I've watched all of Brenda and Laura. I've watched all of Carol Saltbox Stitcher. I watch Sean the Periwinkle Stitcher. I watch Kim Continue Needleworker Kim. I have 2 cross stitch besties that I always watch their Flosstube. And to be perfectly honest, a good portion of why I did this is because I wanted them to have a Flosstube for me. And so I watch Audrey Stitch Bead, and I watch Jim Stitch and Jim. I watch Teresa Kogut and Fox and Rabbit. I just started watching this Shady Grove Stitcher, Emily, and she cracks me up. I mean, I laugh so hard during her videos. I had to tone it down the other night because I was afraid I was going to wake up my husband up because I was stitching in bed while he was sleeping, and I was afraid she was going to make me wake him up by making me laugh so hard. But the one who I've actually been really binge watching right now is Michelle of Mama Loves You GB. I met her at St. Fleur Symposium. She was one of our presenters there, and I found out that I have some similar interest in our love of antiques, antique cross-stitch charts, and particularly of the style. And her speech that she gave, her lecture that she gave as a faculty member at St. Fleur Symposium was just outstanding. And so I've actually started going back and binge watching her Flosstubes, and they're just amazing. So I love watching her. I watch Tara Sullivan of Sully Stitches. I'm trying to think who else. I think that covers a lot of them. If I did forget you, I absolutely apologize. I'll mention you again in a future Flosstube. And of course, I think I already said Brenda and Laura, Brenda and the Serial Starter. And but yeah, I'll put some Flosstubers that I do follow in the description below if that helps. And that's it. So as Tara Sullivan always says, how do we end, right? What do we say? And, you know, I saw a chart from 2025 Nashville Needlework Market from Shakespeare's Peddler, Kindred Stitcher, that says, be good. No, do good, be kind. Be kind, do good. I think that's right. Be kind, do good. So that's how we're going to end today, Flosstube. We're going to end with be kind, do good, and we'll see you later.